Good morning. Today I'm very happy to welcome artist Diddy Wheldon from the UK. Before we had an interview with her on the website, a written interview a couple of months ago, and today she's coming live together on our YouTube channel. Good afternoon, Diddy.
Good afternoon, Sherif. It's very, very kind of you to ask me, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Diddy, before we speak about what you're working on right now, and your background, I want to ask you, is Diddy your name or is a nickname?
No, Diddy is a nickname that I collected when I was about 15 years old, and I started working in the theatre. And the reason being is because I was 5'2", and everybody I worked with, they were all about 5'11" to 6 foot. So it was actually a name that I was given when I started working in the theatre. But that's my kind of my artist name. Yeah. So that's what everybody knows me as. My family of the people that know my real name. So,
yes. What is your real name?
I'm actually called Margaret. So it's Margaret Wheldon, and you can find me on the IMDb under Margaret Wheldon. But I was actually named after my grandma. My grandma was called Margaret as well. So Diddy is my nickname. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's like tiny Margaret.
Yeah. Very much so. It means small.
And how did you start as a child and as a model later on?
Okay, so I was very lucky in the respect that my mother worked for a gentleman called Pete Bovey, and he was the head of NATKY, and NATKY was an artist technicians union for theatre and TV in the UK in the 70s, and she was his PA. And so through that I got a modelling contract with a company called Bride Style. So they did bridal wear, and I was a child model modeling bridesmaids dresses. So that's kind of where that side of things started. But we also used to go camping a lot, and the caravanning meets and camping meets that we did, there were big events around like an event in Nottingham called Goose Fair, and it was a huge camping meet, and they used to have this big marquee and a massive stage, and we would always put on shows. So I was always, my granddad was a site secretary, so I was always put in these shows, and I would sing and I would dance and I would act. And at one point I remember we used to do this every year, and there was big audience of about 400-500 people, so I kind of got over my stage fright. But at one point I remember being quite nervous on stage, and I just kept looking at the follow spot, and that was kind of, I just paid attention to the follow spot. And then I got really obsessed with lighting and sound, and I wanted to be a lighting and sound technician. So that kind of took me into the theatre, and that's what I did in the theatre. I trained as a lighting and sound technician in the theatre, but learning, like I worked in every single department. So I worked in wardrobe, stage management, properties, paint shop, finance, administration, all of it really. And I learned of some very amazing artistic directors, producers, actors, and I stayed in the theatre for about 20 years on and off, but did stage management, show management, and then production management as well, but always keeping my hand in at doing acting, but just sort of mainly background work. And then I did more sort of short films and web series and theatre and interactive murder mysteries, etc. So it all came from there really. It's quite a long answer.
Yes. When I was in Egypt growing up in the 70s, I was born in 71. I was introduced to mostly American content, was a subtitle in Arabic.
Yes.
And my uncle, my mother's, my brother, he used to love cinema and novel. He used to read a lot, although he studied science, chemistry. So we
Mm-hmm.
used to read novels together. He used to love thrillers like Hitchcock. They used to publish novels with Hitchcock on the cover.
Yes.
Many thriller writing. But what still touched me, a Yuki series. I wasn't introduced to Avengers and The Prisoner until I a little grew up and started to read about history. But
Okay.
the one I saw really and touched me, Thriller, the UK series. You remember it? Yeah, it used to be a horror, psychology, magic television series. And it featured a lot of big stars. And, like Helen Mirren, like nobody. I think it was very nice. It was, and
Was
it was called
sorry.
Thriller.
It was
It was
called
called
Thriller. Okay. I
Thriller.
don't
Yeah, I will
remember.
send
I
you
remember.
a link about it because it was very well made at the time. They used to shoot on video,
Mm-hmm.
at the time maybe Omatic tapes.
Yes.
But it was very well written, and when I started to grow up, I started to look for it on YouTube and stuff like that. And they have a box on sale on Amazon. I think I encountered once, but there are some episodes on YouTube.
I've not.
Uh,
I must
Never heard.
admit, I've not heard of Thriller, but I
Maybe
used.
your parents kept you out of it because it was
No, no.
scary.
I watched because I'm very like I was born in 72, so there's not much difference in our age really.
Yes.
But I used to watch this program called Sapphire and Steel, or at least
Yes.
the characters were called Sapphire and Steel. And there was a program which had Joanna Lumley, and this was very similar. It was really well written. It was really scary. It was a thriller, and there was lots of kind of magic in it, and mystical kind of metaphysical things in it. And I remember that, and I did watch Prisoner as well because it was I'm a free man. I'm not a number. So I do remember that series as well. And then I think there was like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Son of but Sapphire and Seal was the one I watched, and that used to scare me. But I obviously there was Doctor Who as well. I don't know if you ever saw Doctor Who because I was Tom Baker and he was the one with the long scarf.
Yes, I know about Doctor Who because it's still playing right now until now.
Yeah. And film-wise, I used to love the 50s. So James Dean was somebody that I absolutely adored. James Dean. I thought he was a phenomenal actor, and so I watched Rebel and Rebel Without a Cause, and East of Eden and Giant. And I remember going to the cinema in the 80s, I think it was about 87, and I actually sat and watched all three films back to back. I spent most of the day in the cinema there, but I used to love Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and all of those classic kind of big musicals that they used to do in Hollywood. They were really good films, and I really adored John Wayne as well. I was always a John Wayne fan. I like Clint Eastwood, but John Wayne was almost my cowboy. So yeah.
I did an interview with the co-editor of the first Rocky film with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, did you really? I bet that was interesting.
Yes, and I asked him about everything, and I sent an interview request to Bill Conti, who did the Rocky music, the soundtrack, the very famous soundtrack. The thing is, the editor of Rocky, the first one, he did only the first one and got the Oscar, but he didn't return for the sequel. His wife is John Wayne's daughter.
Oh, I did not know that. I must admit, I did not know that. I did watch Rocky, and I watched, was it First Blood as well, with Sylvester Stallone? But I must admit, I think the second one I watched, but I don't think I watched any more. I was more into sort of like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. But I mean, obviously, Rocky is such a classic movie as well, though. But that's a really interesting piece of information. I did not know that. I did not know that at all.
Yeah, and it was it was like an icon, for he was successful to reinvent himself outside of the westerns, like Clint Eastwood, to do Cup and and non I can say like revisionary westerns, not conventional westerns with Indians or gangs robbing banks and stuff like that. But tell me, can I call you Diddy?
Yeah, of course you can. Not a problem. I prefer people to call me Diddy, to be honest. Yeah, makes me feel young.
Right now, we were just talking before the live about your master's in metaphysics.
Yes.
And the world is small. You're having it here in Ecuador, studying remotely. But I want to ask you, how did you get introduced to metaphysics?
Okay. Okay. So I've always like history was my kind of best subject at school, but I've always spent most of my life doing TV, film, theatre, etc., and music. So I've always had a fascination with ancient history, and especially Egyptian history. And as you can see, I have some Egyptian artwork just behind me. And I actually worked in Egypt in 2012 in Cairo for a short amount of time, because I was always fascinated by the pyramids and what they were actually for. And I like alternate kind of views on history as well. So Robert Duvall and Graham Hancock. And like also I'm English, so paganism was something that I was quite interested in, and sort of that kind of thing as well. So with paganism, obviously there's quite a lot of mystery, and it's all about earth and energies, and being into sound and lighting, because I trained as a sound and lighting technician in the theatre, and I studied theatre and sound and light. I have this fascination with light, with sound, with frequencies, with resonance and vibration, and just sort of being camping. I like camping, so being with nature as well. So all of these things made sense in the respect of I've already done a foundation degree in TV, film, video. I've done a foundation degree in sound engineering. I've worked professionally in the theatre as a production manager, as a sound engineer, lighting, sound, etc. But during this period of time, at the moment, I was stuck for something to do, and I was really inspired by two people. One person being Dr. Craig Wright, who's the inventor of Bitcoin, because literally he just studies all the time, and he's got so many degrees, and other things. And I was also really inspired by a guy called Jimmy, who does a YouTube channel called Bright Insight, and it's all about ancient technology and ancient history. And I met this lady called Christine Breeze, who lives in Ecuador, and she has the University of Metaphysical Sciences, which is in Ecuador. And I was looking through that website. I just came across it randomly for some reason. And I was looking at the website, and everything on it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. This fascinates me. It's stuff that I already know about, and I've got the time and I've got the money. So I actually paid to do the course with the intention of actually going over to Ecuador and spending about 6 months over there at her retreat place over there, which is called Gaia Sagada. And just sort of basically being able to get away from technology again, and just kind of reconnecting with nature. So last year, 2019, I did the degree. So I got a degree, B.SC, MSc, which is Bachelor of Metaphysical Sciences. This year, about 10 weeks ago, I finished my master's. So I handed that in, and I'm just waiting for them to come back to me with my results. So that will mean, I finished my master's, which would be master's in metaphysical sciences. So once I get the certificate back from them, I've also paid to do a PhD, and the PhD will be in divinity. And I like the idea of being Diddy, Doctor of Divinity. So it kind of came from being a little bit kind of there wasn't a lot of work for actors for a whole year in the UK because they closed the industry down. So it kind of came from being inspired by Craig, being inspired by Jimmy, not having any work, and basically just thinking, well, what can I do, to keep myself occupied during this time? And that's where it came from. And as I said, I've got this real fascination with enneagrams and just philosophy and science. My dad used to be a scientist as well, and ancient history, and it just all came together. So that's why it made sense for me to do that. But yeah. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Do you remember any film or television series you have seen that do justice to metaphysics? Because sometimes movies, mix metaphysics with superstitious or magic.
Yeah,
Do you think you have seen something that do justice to this type of science?
there was I must admit, I haven't actually watched television for about 4 years as well, to be honest, because I've been very interested in other things. But there was a series a number of years ago called Heroes, which was great because it was all about like human beings being able to connect to their original powers, like the third eye and the pineal gland and stuff, and telepathy. But one of the films that really did it was the Indiana Jones series. I think that woke a lot of people up to ancient history. And I studied sort of Zachariah Stitchin's books and the Sumerian cuneiform texts and stuff, and the Aramaic. And a lot of biblical films end up being quite metaphysical as well, in a sense. But there's plenty of stuff out. Even Harry Potter is very magical and uses a lot of metaphysical sciences. It depends on if people kind of go for that
I
thing or
think
not.
Doctor Strange as well. I was telling you, did you see Doctor Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch?
I didn't, but I do like Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing film. The last film I saw him in was actually the Enigma Code one.
Yes, very good, very well made.
And
Great actor.
he's a brilliant actor. Sherlock Holmes as well. I actually was in Enola Holmes, which was filmed a couple of years ago with Millie Bobby Brown.
Yes,
now she was in Stranger Things. Yeah.
Yes,
So Stranger Things as well actually hits on quite a lot of metaphysical subjects. I think a lot of it, is from ancient mysteries and mythology as well. Sumerians, Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, etc. And they all kind of followed, these stories kind of followed through in all of these different cultures. And I spent a bit of time in Beijing in 2014, about 6 months in Beijing. So the Chinese philosophy and Chinese culture is quite interesting, especially they have like Monkey. Monkey was a kind of godlike, the monkey god, the monkey king is a big kind of story and history for them, where he was trapped inside a mountain and then released from a mountain, and he had all his special powers as well, and he fought a battle in heaven. And the same with Indian history as well. If you go back with some of the Indian gods as well, there were big battles in the heavens and things, and I found all that really interesting. And in Ecuador itself, I know that there's evidence of giants, and in Peru and South Africa, and in Peru as well, you have the Nazca lines, and little models of gliders. So they were definitely flying back in ancient times, but in gliders. So I found all of that really interesting as well. So and I say it all kind of ties in together. But I do think Indiana Jones is probably a big wake up call for a lot of people, not just myself as well. But there's so many things on television and so many series now that are made along those lines. I mean, I also studied 3D Studio Max, and I did 3D modeling and animation for a good while, and I got quite a lot of certificates and stuff for doing that a long time ago. But I can't find it kind of interesting because you can actually, obviously, you see how films use all these green screens, and they use all this, like, you know, all the sort of technology to make magic and explosions, and, you know, just put yourselves into like fifth dimensional spaces and all of that. So I find that quite fascinating, and it kind of comes with the AR and the VR of what's happening now as well. And this thing with the metaverse, you know, I mean, those ideas come from these metaphysical sciences, the things that aren't kind of explained. You know, physics and philosophy is one part of it. That's something that you can tangibly see, tangibly hold on to. But metaphysics is more about the stuff that you can't actually see, the stuff that's not explainable. And I find that really, really fascinating. Yeah.
You spoke about Robert Duvall. He used to come to the pyramids frequently. Was a friend of mine, a writer from the United States, specialized in sacred geometry.
Okay, that's really interesting because I met Robert.
Yes, her name is Maureen Saint Germain. Yeah, and she came to Egypt once. And we went to Alexandria, and she presented a lecture, and I did the translation in Arabic. There is an association in Alexandria, you know, for spiritual and paranormal science, and all of the members are they are really renowned people. The founder is a medical doctor, you know, is a physician.
Okay,
And the rest of the members, either, you know, engineers, either doctors, either authors. So we did the presentation there. It was more than 15 years ago. But Maureen used to bring people, you know, they do some kind of secret journey. They go to Cairo, they take the Nile until Aswan and Luxor to visit the temples, you know, and you know, like a complete journey, you know, all together, and then they can go to Jerusalem and stuff like that, you know, to follow the old paths, you know, the old roads. So I will send you her link as well. Maybe you like to have her books.
Yeah, do. It's interesting you say that because I actually spoke to Robert due to a friend of mine who is a German writer, because I went over to Germany to do a film with him called Torquemada's Quest, and that's how I got connected to Robert. I mean, I'd already known about Robert, but I got connected to him and had really nice conversations with him, and I actually did a portrait of him, which used to be on my Instagram. It's probably, I might have taken it down and put it on my Relica, but I find him fascinating because he had the Orion theory with the pyramids and the alignment to Orion, but I think it's been more that Sirius is aligned to Orion. And I would love to go back to Egypt. I really wanted to go and stay with the Bedouin tribes in the desert, but I just didn't get a chance to be able to do that. And it is something that I would really love to do, is go back to Egypt and spend a bit more time there, because when I was there, I was working. And that's, yeah, no, please send me that information, please. Because currently the PhD I'm going to do in sound resonance and frequencies. So there's a lot of Michael Tellinger's research that I'm quite interested in. He's in South Africa at the moment, but actually where he is, Great Zimbabwe, actually aligns with the pyramids as well. So, and the pyramids in Egypt align with, you know, the ones in China, the ones in Peru as well, don't they? So yeah,
of course,
yeah.
yeah. I was just telling my wife because my wife loved Egypt. We lived there for the last 10 years, and we brought some, hieroglyphic and papyrus gifts for our friends here.
Yeah.
And I was telling my wife that the theory that the Egyptians were giants because the temples, they were very
So big.
tall,
Yeah.
so big, and it complies with the theory about building the pyramids and how they brought the blocks, of the pyramids,
Yeah.
and I've seen many films and read a lot of stuff about Tesla, the scientist, and
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
believes
Yeah.
that
No,
the,
369 and yeah,
of course,
free energy.
the pyramids, yes, free energy, and the pyramids used to generate some kind of an electromagnetic field for
Yeah.
the Egyptians, and because they discovered a lot of stuff, medicine, and I remember as well. I used to have a French mathematic teacher when I was in school in Egypt, and he showed us how the Egyptians used to calculate the symbol of 1, 2, 3, 4, and how they used to calculate arithmetics, during Egyptian time. So it was very interesting as well.
No, I can imagine that was curious. Very,
Yeah.
very much so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I say it is quite because I know there was a basketball player. I think the tallest basketball player. Can't remember where he was from, but he was 7'5". Okay, and that obviously is in modern times. And I know for a fact that there are, as I said, I know there are footprints, giant footprints in Ecuador, and I know there are giant footprints in South Africa that have been like imprinted into granite rock. And that's quite an
Yeah.
interesting because apparently the rock can actually melt and then, go back to form again. But also there are the Taurus stones, and the Taurus stones is basically like a stone that has a hole that has been drilled out of the middle of it, and those holes in the middle do collate energy, and they're used as healing stones, and the sound frequencies and the echoes and the reverberations and the vibrations that are kind of picked up when you're actually in the pyramid itself, and is fascinating within itself. And sound can produce energy, can produce heat. I mean, there was a guy a good number of years ago from New Zealand, can't remember his name, but he was a saxophone player, and I love saxophone as well, so I pick it up whenever I can. But he could boil water with a saxophone, so he proved that you could boil water with a certain sound frequency. And obviously there's the Rife frequency, which kills cancer cells. So sound, I don't think there's been enough research, or at least if the research is there, it's been very, very hidden from people about sound and about the energy that's collated and everything from this. But the Bosnian Pyramid, they took a picture of the Bosnian Pyramid, and they actually, within this photograph that they took, they actually caught energy coming out of the top of the pyramid, going up into a straight line into the sky. So that's a fascinating one as well to look at, because the Bosnian pyramid is quite a big one. But I think you're so lucky having to spend that time in Egypt as well. I mean, obviously you've got the heritage there, but yeah, Ecuador I would really like to go to and just kind of find a bit more information out about these things, see it, first on instead of sort of second-hand information. But yeah, giants like definitely roamed the planet, and I do think that is it's not just a theory, it's a fact. They were there, they did roam the planet, there is evidence of it as well.
Yes, but tell me about your interest in Bitcoin and blockchain as well.
Okay, so I've also done finance, so it kind of came from there, and I built my own website. And when I when I first came across Bitcoin, I didn't quite know what it was. So I did a lot of research to kind of find out what it was. I was looking for pay-per-click advertising, and it was on this website. And I was like, oh, what's that? And through my searches, I came across BTC. And then I kind of then understood that BTC wasn't actually Bitcoin. And then there was this big hash war. And I was trying to find, well, okay, the people, I need to find someone that's not going to be a scammer or is going to teach me about this technology so that I understand it properly. And the name Craig Wright kept flying around. So I kind of then discovered Dr. Craig S. Wright, and he is Satoshi, and he did a interview on BBC in 2015 stating the fact that he was Satoshi. So it came from there, and then I came across a few more people who were very intelligent people. Like Ryan X. Charles is a astrophysicist, and he was into Bitcoin, and he did this series called The Theory of Bitcoin, and it was about a 50-hour educational series lectures with him and Dr. Craig Wright. And I sat and I watched all of these, and literally by the end of it, I had a thorough understanding of what Bitcoin was, the fundamentals behind Bitcoin, what the economics of Bitcoin are, and what you can actually do with it. And you know, it's commoditized data sovereignty. It allows you to be in charge of your own data. It's also a peer-to-peer cash system, so you can interact with people on a peer-to-peer basis. It's micro payments, nano payments. So you are in Ecuador, and I could, via my hand cash wallet, I could send you, say, $10, and it would take literally a second to get to you without me having to go to the post office and fill out all these forms and then pay £20 to send you £10. So there were so many things that really intrigued me about it. And because I did do finance management jobs as well at some point in my life, the accounting side of it was really intriguing, because it's like a triple ledger accounting system, but it also is a data storage system. And I have websites, and I was thinking to myself, okay, well, does this mean that if I've got a one-page website, would I be able to store that data on chain and have my website stored on chain and then not have to pay for server fees? So coming from that, made me do more research. I'm one of these people, I don't take things on face value. If somebody tells me something, I do a lot of deep diving, and I think that comes from acting as well, because you know, when you have a character and you kind of dive into the character and why the character would do certain things and what the psychology is of the character. So from there, I discovered who Satoshi Nakamoto was, this infamous character that everybody apparently says they don't know who he is. I found out who the inventor was, and I decided that basically, well, if I want to know about Bitcoin, the best person to teach me about Bitcoin is going to be the person that invented it. So I'm not sure if you are aware at the moment, but there's a really big court case that's happening, and Craig is defending himself as being Satoshi Nakamoto. And it's worth about, I think it's like a $60 billion court case. It's one of the biggest financial court cases in history. But this technology is amazing, and one of the things that it does do is that it takes power away from kind of a banking system in a respect, because you're doing peer-to-peer, and it's a trust network. And you can have legal contracts on there as well, which are all signed. So, for example, there's a gentleman that I met who's in the States, and he's a director, and he has my movies and my music, and he was one of the first people in history to actually sign a Hollywood actress via a contract, like a 1 cent contract on the BSV Bitcoin blockchain. And he did a movie as well, which was all funded by people from Bitcoin, BSV blockchain. And his name's Ted Riviera, and he is quite prominent in the space at the moment and teaching other people as well. And like literally, you could put a video on the blockchain, and instead of having to watch advertisements like you do on YouTube, you could just pay, say, 10 cents, watch the video, and then, you know, the creators of the video, they actually get that money directly to themselves in a peer-to-peer way. And you've got split transactions and things. I just think it's a really brilliant technology, and so it can, all of world trade could be done on the BSV blockchain 50 times over. It solves so many problems. And so I then, be having an interest in that, came across a lot of women in the space that also had the same interest, and we decided, with the intervention of a gentleman also in the space called Satoshi, to get together and form a group also during this lockdown period, so that we could actually help people understand and try and educate them about what BSV, Bitcoin blockchain, actually is and what you can do with it. So I've been producing a YouTube channel and editing videos with a group of ladies. There's about 11 of us all together that actually do the shows, and we just bring developers on, or CEOs of companies like in the gaming industry, or, like I said, you know, Ted Riviera is a producer director, and music as well, because it's a disruptive technology. So as a musician, I've got music and that's on Spotify, but I only get like 3 cents per 1,000 plays. But with Bitcoin, there's a company called Blaircast, and they're starting a new platform, and you as the artist wouldn't have to wait 6 months for your 3 cents to be sent to you. You would get that payment directly as somebody is actually listening to the music, so it would come to you straight away via their platform. So there's a lot happening in the space. It's quite exciting. But as for movie wise, I have been talking to a writer recently about a pilot, acting in a pilot as a character called Rachel, who is a doctor whose daughter has some special abilities that her daughter's not aware of yet. So yeah, so I've been quite busy.
Didi, I want to thank you very much for this interview. And
thank you for asking me, Sherif.
And once you have your grade, don't forget to send us champagne, or come bring into yourself to Ecuador, you know.
Honestly, it's the first place, like if and when I can, it's the first place I want to go to, seriously. And now I know 2 people in Ecuador as well. It'd be amazing. I could pop in and say hello. So I'm hoping and fingers crossed that is going to be something I can do in the future. Thank you so much for asking me.
Thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and let's be in touch. Thank you very much.
Definitely. You take care of yourself, Sherif. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.